Welcome, everybody. My name is Levi Sim. This is the Perfectly Clear webinar, and I'm glad you're here. I've got a real treat for you today. Chris Anson is here to teach us about photography with drones and how to make your photography better, and also how to finish your photography, of course, because we are sponsored today by Perfectly Clear from Anson Tech. And Perfectly Clear is a terrific tool for finishing your photographs. Whether you're doing portraits and you're using the incredible face recognition and skin smoothing techniques that Perfectly Clear makes not only available, but also automatic. Or if you're doing landscapes and cityscapes and aerial drone photography, Perfectly Clear is going to really give you powerful tools to help your pictures look just better, look the way you had in mind when you shot them. The color controls are second to none. Again, the portrait retouching is the best in the industry. I'm a full-time photographer myself, and I use Perfectly Clear to quickly get my portraits ready to share with my clients. And then I also love it for my landscape work. There's nothing in the world that works better on landscapes than Perfectly Clear, especially in blues and greens. It's just incredible how much more richness and vividacity, I don't know if that's a word, but it should be, vividacity I can get out of my digital camera files by using Perfectly Clear. So I'm glad you guys are here. Chris Anson is joining us, and he is an old friend of mine. We have worked together in a lot of different ways and on some different projects and in some different states. And you're really going to enjoy learning from him. Whenever I know Chris is working with something, I know he's going to be an expert at it. That's the thing about Chris. And he has done that with his aerial photography. He's been a long-time pilot, and now he has turned his eye to, and his brain and his creativity to creating using drones. And so I'm really glad to introduce him to you. Let me talk just a second more here. Welcome, everybody. I'm Levi Sim. Chris Anson is joining us to teach us how to use our drones to make better photographs. And while you're here, let me tell you that Perfectly Clear has offered us a discount code. It's a phenomenal tool, and it's already priced just right, but using the code DRONE30, you're going to get 30% off your Perfectly Clear complete purchase. And you'll also receive that in an email right after this. So use Drone30, buy Perfectly Clear, and you're not going to regret it. You're going to really enjoy using Perfectly Clear to make your photographs their best. And let me turn some time over to Chris here. Chris?
Hey.
What else do you want to tell us about yourself?
Oh, let's see. Now, do I need to turn share on at this point or not?
Only if you want to show us a picture right now.
Yeah, let's just start. Let's kind of fire this guy up and show you. That seems like more interesting to look at.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay. So
you're in Oregon, right, Chris? You're in Portland?
Yeah, I'm in Portland, Oregon. Let's see. Background. I've been shooting landscape and cityscapes for probably 12 years, 15 years. And I've been working with the drone technology for a couple of years now. And what helped me transition into the drones was I flew radio-controlled helicopters years ago for probably 4 or 5 years, and these were the 6-foot rotor span helicopters. So, yeah, big, unwieldy, very difficult to fly, and so drones were honestly much simpler. Not that there isn't a lot to learn, and I still have lots to learn, but it did help that process.
Now, hang on. That's not enough. You've told me more about this. Not only did you fly those RC helicopters, but you could fly those helicopters upside down. You could land them in controlled crashes. I mean, you were a pretty good pilot.
Oh yeah, thanks. Yeah, we had all kinds of competitions where we would do the same kind of moves that they would do with the planes, where we do split S's and loops, and we would do full down auto rotations where we basically power the engine off, and you learn how to get the rotor to start spinning so that you could flare out at the bottom and land rather than crash. Yeah, crazy stuff, but yeah, a lot of fun.
Wow. Wow. And so drones are child's play.
Well, yes and no. I think that the way that it depends on what you're doing with drones. I mean, I was in Dallas 3 or 4 weeks ago doing a shoot with a local media company, and we were doing pre-production Lexus commercials. And so tracking on a street, being careful of where you're flying, not flying into a tree or a sign, being aware of people. It's a whole nother world when you're out flying with those kinds of obstacles. With the helicopters, we tended to be out in these larger, big fields. With the drones, there's usually people, animals, houses, trees around that you just have to be really aware of. So in some ways it's easier, in other ways it's more complicated.
Yeah, no doubt. Sorry, Chris, we've got a couple of housekeeping things yet to go over. We've got a lot of folks tuning in from all over, and I understand some of you are having a little trouble seeing and hearing. I'm afraid that's probably due to your connection on your own computer, but don't worry, we are recording this and we'll share it with you again later in an email. Also, that link I was talking about for the coupon code, that will come to you in an email. You've registered for this webinar and you'll get a follow-up email afterward. And I'm glad you guys are tuning in. As you do, please feel free to leave a question for Chris in the chat and I will relay that to him as we're going through things. So if you have some questions about piloting, about flying drones, about making better pictures, doing it especially, feel free to leave those in there. And we'll let Chris keep on going. Thanks, Chris.
Okay. Well, so if we have people out there that want to do this work commercially, then in the US and in many other countries, you have to take some sort of formal test. Here it's the FAA Part 107 testing. And they're pretty strict about if you're making money directly or indirectly, you need to have the certification. So that's sort of one side of it. The other side of it is that there's a lot of really good things that you learn by sitting for the test. Learn about the drone and about its abilities and flying around near airports, that sort of thing. So from just a knowledge standpoint and becoming a better drone pilot, taking that test, getting your certification can really enhance that part of it. So there's just a little piece on the whole certification process.
Wow, yeah. That there's nothing like taking a test to really help you learn things. And I mean, these things are dangerous.
They are. You can, I don't know if people can see, but in the background.
Would you grab it for us, Chris? Did you see an idea of how large that thing is?
Hang on here. Yeah, I don't know. Can people see this now?
Yeah, there you go. You're not just flying like a Mavic.
No, this is a DJI Inspire 2. I don't have the camera and gimbal on it even. So with the dual batteries and the camera setup and stuff, we're typically 8 pounds, 9 pounds.
Wow, yeah.
So yeah, if this flies into somebody, they can get hurt.
Yeah, and interestingly, the same rules apply no matter how big your drone is.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, with this thing fully loaded with camera. I'll show you the camera too for those who. The camera is a separate, comes in a separate case, and it's a camera gimbal combination. Can they see this okay?
Yeah, now they can see that great. Yeah, that's an enormous camera, really. I mean, you're flying a micro four thirds camera in the sky.
Yeah, this is like a GH4,
Yeah.
GH4 or GH5 sensor.
Yeah, that's what. Oops, gone again. Oh yeah. So which camera are you using there? people are asking?
This is the X5S. They also make an X7, which is a larger sensor, basically, more dynamic range. But this one this is plenty. So that's the camera.
Yeah. And you can fly any micro four thirds lens virtually.
Well,
as long as you can balance it, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a weight issue. The gimbal itself will only support so much weight. So the I fly with the 12 Olympus 12, the 25, and the 45 typically.
Awesome.
There are a couple of others that will work, but those three give me the flexibility that I need.
Yeah, I'm so jealous. So I have a drone. I've got the what you call them? I've got a Phantom, but
Phantom 4?
a Phantom 3.
Okay.
Advanced.
Nice.
Advanced, I believe. Anyhow, it's fun to fly. It makes pictures and things, but it's got a fixed lens that is only this big. It's a wide angle lens all the time, and my eyeballs don't see the world in wide angle, and so I'm jealous that you can switch your lenses and do and have the right view of the world that you're after. That's really fun. Sorry, I'm looking like a first timer here. This is not my total first time, but
you're definitely not a first timer at this. That's for sure.
Yeah, something has changed for me here in the controls on Zoom. So I apologize, guys. But I'm glad you guys are tuning in. And folks were asking how much that kind of a setup costs.
Well, it really depends on the camera. There's 3 different cameras right now that you can buy with an Inspire 2, but you're looking basically at $3,000 to $4,000 to get into a setup. If you're careful, buying used would be a possibility. And I have a friend who got a really great deal on an Inspire 2 with the X4S, which is the smaller camera. It's not interchangeable lenses. The camera itself is about $2,000, the one that I have, the X5S. And if you jump up to the X7, you're at about, I'm trying to remember, $2,600 or $2,800 for the camera. And then it's got a new set of lenses. DJI just purchased, what's the company that the lenses are? Levi, can you help me? They're a medium format company.
Oh, did they phase 1?
No. I want to say Hasselblad.
Hasselblad, yeah. Is it?
I think
yeah, it is Hasselblad. Everyone's tuning in. Yeah, Hasselblad.
Okay, yeah.
Wow.
And so they had them built a custom series of lenses for that Super 35 sensor, and all but one of those is actually full frame lens. Guess what the X8 is going to be?
Holy cow.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot out on it, but that's just a guess that we'll see a full frame.
That's
sensor.
really cool. That changes the way you can view the whole world, and that'll be a lot of fun.
Totally.
Well, great. Well, why don't you share some tips for making better pictures while we're flying?
Okay. Well, let's talk about the basics of taking pictures, whether they're landscapes, cityscapes, and perhaps could be used in other areas. But primarily, well, let's see, where do I start? I had some great mentorship early on, and one of the first questions that I ask myself, and this has just become habit, is what am I taking a picture of? Let me go ahead and share so that they're not just staring at me. Let's share some. So let's do that. And everybody's seen, let me pop up another image here. Hang on. Oh, this is a good one. Sorry for the delay here, just figuring this all out. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay,
Wow. Yeah.
so this is what's Vista House or Crown Point in the Columbia River Gorge, and I'm at about 880 feet. One of the rules with drone flying, at least in the US, is that you have a maximum of 400 feet above ground level AGL, or you can be up to 400 feet above. You can be 400 feet above it as long as you're within 400 feet of it. So I'm legal at this point in this at 800 feet. But this is a view that nobody sees because there's nothing out here that would allow people to see. So the first question when I put the drone up in the air, or I'm taking landscape photography or cityscape photography on the ground, is what am I taking a picture of? Because it's easy to get up there and get lost.
Yeah.
And just be wowed, especially with the drone. It's kind of, it can be easy to just be wowed by what you see and kind of lose sight of what the image is about.
That's great advice.
The next piece that, slow me down here if I'm going too fast, definitely. The next piece is, I've got this amazing sunset or sunrise or whatever, and I need to look at what's in the foreground and midground as well. So I've got this amazing sunset, but I've got garbage on the ground in front of me. The image is not going to look great. So that's the second part. What's going on in the foreground in the image, in the midground, and in the background? Is it a good picture overall?
Yeah.
Then in those areas, when we can have a variation in the foreground, midground, background, in color, contrast, texture, content, whatever. I mean, you can see here on this image that we've got, it's a little darker, and then we've got this on the side of the rock face here. Then we've got a bright area, we've got a dark area, we've got a bright area. So variation in those areas can really help in producing a good looking image.
Yeah, right on.
So then the next piece that I want to tell you about with a drone is to move the thing around. I mean, I'll show you guys a couple. Let's see. No, I have another image here to show you.
Well, while you pull that up, Chris, let me just make sure that you guys are seeing a picture of, that you guys were seeing a picture of the Columbia River Gorge on your screen. You weren't just seeing Chris's photograph. Is that right? Okay, great. Thanks, guys. Yeah.
Okay,
go ahead,
so
Chris.
here's another one. So here's another one. This is downtown Portland. Interestingly enough, shot from my backyard.
Wow. Yeah.
So this is what happens when you put the drone up to 400 feet. One of the things to do with the drone is put it up there, look at what you've got, think about what the picture is, take a look at what's in the foreground, midground, background. And I know this is a lot, but as you practice this, it'll become more automatic. Then move the drone, change the altitude.
Yeah.
Slide left, slide right. You just really need to experiment. I mean, I can go out to a site and look at it from a landscape perspective or a cityscape perspective on the ground, and I can tell you pretty much what I'm going to do with it and how it's all going to work. With the drone, I still have to put it up in the air because the perspective is so different. It's really amazing.
Yeah, our lives are so two-dimensional. Otherwise, you know, we walk left and we walk right and we walk forward and we walk backwards. And when you're flying, you've unlocked this completely different world.
Well, and that's a beautiful, that's a great segue, because that's the other thing I want you guys to do is to rotate the drone around, pan it around, turn it around and see what's to the left of what you're looking at. Look what's behind you. You know, in addition to moving it left and right, you'll be amazed sometimes what you see.
Yeah, Matthew was just remarking too that he loves that we get an extra 20 or 30 minutes of sunset because we can go up. That's really fun.
Yes.
And Lauren asks if you were using an ND filter on that photo.
On photos, I typically don't use ND filters because I want the ability to shoot as fast a shutter speed as I can. If I'm shooting video, then I will almost always use ND filters to maintain 24 or 30 frames a second with a specific f-stop on it. But
Yeah.
with photographs, I want to have as much shutter speed as I can get away with. And you'll notice that many of these are shot at golden hour, sunrise, sunset. So there, again, I'm going to want to be able to have as much light coming into the camera as I can.
Yeah.
So here's a shot on the Columbia River.
That's really striking.
Thanks. Yeah, and that was one of those days where I just went out, didn't think anything was going to happen. Wasn't sure that there was anything out there worth taking a picture of. I was actually just out practicing some flying techniques and put it up in the air and went, wow. So again, you know, with the drone, you just never know. There's some amazing things out there that we just can't even imagine because we can't see from that height.
Right. Now, Jerry had a question regarding your setup while you're shooting. What kind of camera profiles do you like to use while you're photographing?
Profiles. Oh, I'm sorry. I shoot in RAW for my photographs. I shoot everything in RAW, and I typically I'll shoot ETTR exposed to the right. I'll shoot them a bit brighter, have the histogram a bit more to the right. One of the things that I found, at least with DJI drones, is that the sensors are a little noisier than I'm used to in some of the cameras that I work with. And so that means that there's a bit more shadow noise, more noise in the dark areas. And so by exposing a bit more to the right on the histogram, without blowing it out, you don't want to push it so far to the right that you blow it out.
Right.
So here's Mount Hood. This was shot in the just a few months ago, back in the end of the summer. Autumn was just starting.
Yeah. Do you find that the downwash from the blades is moving the leaves, or?
Yes, actually, it depends on how close you are to the stuff. Sometimes I'll have to back away or increase the shutter speed so that I don't have that problem. That can be especially problematic in video. I would on a couple of the commercial shoots I was on, we had it low enough to the ground where the DP, the director of photography, was saying, no, that, you know, we're getting too much movement there. We need to bring it up. Or one of the advantages of having the interchangeable lenses, we put on, instead of the 12 millimeter, we put on the 25, and that means that I can bring it up higher off the ground and still get the same framing that we had with, or similar framing than we had with the 12.
That's a great point, is that by changing lenses, you can be farther from your subject and also get a little more impact from the background.
Right. And especially when I want to do some compression, compressing stuff, meaning that it's going to, when I put the 45 millimeter, which is a 90 equivalent, it basically brings things in the background. They look a little bigger, a little closer.
Yeah.
So it compresses everything down. This one was shot with a 25 rather than the 12. So, you know, maybe I would have been better off to bring the mountain closer by shooting with the 45, right?
Well, it would make the mountain closer, but this gives us a real sense of depth using the 25 that way. Like you said, you've got the foreground, you've got the leaves and trees, and then in the midground we've got the vineyards and the forest, and then a distinct background all framed in with Mount Hood back there. So,
thank you. Yeah, this is a good example of what I was talking about earlier. You know, what's the picture of? Well, it's of Mount Hood, but what's in the foreground? what's in the midground, and do we have contrast? And we've got the sun cutting in from the left. It's just coming up. We've got, you know, brighter, darker, brighter, darker.
Yeah.
Variations.
Yeah,
Color variation too, texture variation.
absolutely. Yeah. And someone, let's see, John was mentioning that maybe enhancing the clarity on the mountain would improve this. Well, maybe, but as you've done it, you've given us a great sense of the depth of things. Leaving some haze and softness to the background is a terrific technique. When I look at fine art painters, they use sharpness to define distance, and things that are a little less sharp are a lot farther away. And you've done a great job of allowing the haze and the atmospheric conditions to show us just how far away Mount Hood is.
Thanks. Yeah, and trust me, I did look at making the mountain sharper, but there was so much haze in the sky. Even using some of the great tools that I have, there was only so much that I could remove. And then, like you said, you know, there was a point at which it started to look artificial. It
Right.
just didn't have the same look and feel.
Yeah.
The angle of the sun, there was, with all of the moisture in the air, the angle of the sun was just perfect for lighting that all up. So yeah, there was a lot of haze and light fog in the air.
Right. Right. Yeah. But between the foggy mornings in Oregon and the haze from forest fires in the fall, you get some terrific colors out there. Now, a couple of people were also asking about tips for flying in the city, because some of them want to do landscape or real estate photography. Those things are all included in your test. Is that right?
In the test itself?
Like when you're preparing for the test, you're studying the rules about flying in the city.
Yeah, flying in the city can be a little bit. Well, let me think about how to answer that. Yes, I mean there's rules right now that talk about that we are not allowed to fly over people. Now those are changing. Right. The FAA has just actually released some proposed changes to that whole thing. So with the right modifications to a drone and the right types of drones, we may be able to do that. But for right now, if you fly your drone over somebody and they're not part of the shoot and they haven't signed a waiver and that drone falls on them and hurts them, guess who's liable?
Right.
Yeah. If you're doing, even as a hobbyist, it doesn't matter if you're doing this as a commercial pilot or as a hobbyist.
Yeah, there's a photographer in Seattle who dropped the drone on somebody at an event and ended up with 30 days in jail and a huge fee.
I hadn't heard about that. Wow.
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago. So
okay, yeah, that's well, and depending on what you can be fined, you can go to jail. They can take away your license if you're a commercial pilot. But I think more than anything, I mean, when I go out and I'm asked to do stuff by a client or a DP or a director, we did a shoot for Discovery Channel in the middle of last summer, and there were things that the director, he was from London, great guy, was asking us to do some things and they weren't legal. So we had to figure out ways to accomplish those same things, putting a longer lens on, not being over the top of the roadway, figuring out solutions that will allow us to give him a good result, but that didn't put us at risk, because as the pilot in command, when I'm piloting that drone, the buck stops with me. I'm the one that's responsible for whatever happens with that drone. It's not the director's fault.
That can be a bit that could be anxious, right? To tell the guy no.
we did a night shoot up in Troutdale. We had to get a special waiver from the FAA for flying at night. I did this with a good friend of mine who owns Portland Drones. I own Portland Pro Drones, so we do contract work back and forth. And then we had to do special training to get that waiver. And so I was flying, we had to walk the area previously to see where all the lines were and the potential things we could run into, but it was pitch black when we were doing these shoots of police cars and sheriff's cars traveling at 80
Wow.
or 90 miles an hour on US 99, and we were tracking them and flying over the top of them 3 feet above the cars. And yeah, it was a high pucker factor for sure.
Wow. That's incredible.
It
That's
was.
really incredible. We've got a lot of questions about processing. Yes, Chris often uses luminosity masks. He uses sometimes perfectly clear, sometimes other things. Somebody asks, do you use infuse? Are you doing HDRs?
Well, let's see. Let me just finish up on. Let me come back to that in just a moment. The other thing I wanted, people were asking me about how I shoot. I typically shoot bracketed as well.
Mm-hmm.
I will shoot on the X5S. I can do up to 5 shots. I can do 3 or 5. I do 5, and I don't have the ability to set the EV between those. I do a plus 0.7. That's just the default. So
Yeah.
each image is so we have the main image that's shot a little bit ETTR to the exposed to the right a little bit, and then it will shoot 1 plus 0.7 more to the right, another 1 plus 0.7 to the right, and then minus 0.7 and another, I guess it would be 1.4 minus 1.4 to the left of where it was. Does that
Wow.
make
Yeah.
any sense?
That's not a ton of flexibility, but I hope they update that. I mean,
Yeah,
I
it would
usually
be,
shoot 7
yeah,
at
yeah,
one
I'd love to be able to shoot,
Yeah.
a full stop or stop and a half or 2 stops. But it does give me, it does give me the ability to, it gives me some flexibility with that. Sometimes, to answer the question about HDR, I typically don't shoot HDR. What I will do is I will work in Photoshop and do, using luminosity mask, I will do blending.
Yeah.
So I'll take one of this series of bracketed images as my base image, and it might be the one that's the center. It might be one that's slightly brighter or slightly darker. It just depends on the image. And then I might pull 2 others, one that's going to be the darkest image and one that's going to be the brightest. Sometimes I'll just work with a single image, and then using masking, I will take and I will expose. I'll set the exposure on each one of those slightly differently. One focused for maybe the sky, the other one focused for the ground.
Thanks. That's really helpful. Byron is asking, how do you even do HDR? Surely there's too much movement between frames, even in a stable drone.
You shoot really fast.
Yeah.
you shoot it as high, and he's right. I mean, there are times when I'm not able to use the bracketed shots, and there's times where I am. So the faster the shutter speed, the better off, the more likely I am to be able to do that. So
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. Lauren mentions that insurance is a great idea. When you're flying.
Actually, yeah, let's talk about that for just a moment.
Sure.
Insurance actually is a big deal. And there's 2 types of insurance. There's insurance, I have $1 million coverage, and depending on where I'm shooting, a number of my clients, we have 5 million, and that's for liability. The other coverage that I have is what's called hull insurance. And when I'm flying out here, can you guys see this picture of Mount Hood?
Yes.
Okay. When I'm flying out in the middle of this river valley, this is actually Hood River, the river Hood River, and I'm in between these 2 small mountainy areas. If it drops and disappears into that, hull insurance says that they will replace that. Sorry about that. I'm getting notifications on my screen. They will replace the drone, camera, and the whole bit. I think it's a 5% deductible.
Wow.
when I'm out over the Columbia River or out over the top of a mountain, I know that if I lose the drone and the camera and the lens, that my insurance will cover it. But it's more expensive, so there's a trade-off.
And that's hull insurance, HULL.
Hull, HULL, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
isn't covering the whole of the aircraft. Yeah.
Correct. Yes. I wanted to talk for a moment about this image.
Yeah, please.
So this is an example of what I was talking about earlier in this image. I launched this and then moved the drone into the middle of this valley and had to keep moving it left and right, up and down. This isn't at 400 feet. This is ended up being like 250. I put it up at 400, wasn't the right angle on the valley and the river and the trees with the mountain behind it. So I had to move forward, and we're talking thousands of feet. By the time I shot this, I was at about 250 feet above where I took off, but I was probably 2,500 feet away from me, which is quite a ways. But that's what it took to play with it, to get the look and the feel. I can see the image on my iPad, and I was able to get the look and feel that I wanted. That's the thing about this. Experiment with it, play with it, try stuff. Do something different every time you go out, because you just don't know. I learn something every time I shoot.
That's great. One more question for you, and then let's switch over to showing us how you use Perfectly Clear to finish some of these pictures.
Okay.
And real quickly, you guys are seeing a picture broadcast through the internet. The pictures aren't soft. It's just, and they're not banding in the sky. It's just the result of our broadcast. But when you're flying, are you photographing and filming? Like, are you piloting and filming at the same time?
It depends. From a photographic standpoint, I do most of that solo.
For your stills?
For my stills, yeah, for photography. If I'm doing video work, it depends. On the Lexus shoot that I was on a couple weeks back, there were times when I was solo piloting, doing high-speed tracking. There were other times when I had my camera operator on a second remote and iPad, where I was solely responsible for piloting, because we were in a bit dicier area, more challenges, more obstacles. And I wanted him on. He's a very experienced camera operator. I wanted him on the camera to try and capture a specific look and feel that the director was asking for. Yeah,
that's a great idea.
Does that help?
Yes, thank you. We've got a few more questions, but let me come back to your questions right now, guys, or in a few minutes. Let's let Chris show us how Perfectly Clear helps him get some of the looks he's showing us here. I love that picture of St. John's Bridge, by the way. That's
thank you.
Yeah.
So I work primarily with Perfectly Clear out of Photoshop. I also work a lot in Capture One Pro, and I use it as a filter out of Capture One, as well as a filter in Photoshop. Let me move So this is a picture that I shot of downtown Portland, and we've got this beautifully lit sky. This is a raw. So step one, you'll notice on the right-hand side, can you see my screen okay?
Yes, looks good.
I always open my DNG raw files as objects, smart objects, which means that I can double click on this guy and I can come back into the original raw information and make tweaks and modifications. And this is especially important if I'm going to do any kind of masking, because I might change the exposure settings one way on one image where I'm perhaps working on the sky versus the buildings or the ground or whatever. And I always try to get a fairly flat histogram up here at the top, upper right. And I turn off vibrance and saturation. I just zero those out. Using the auto feature can be very helpful here, and then fine tuning it to get a fairly flat histogram. Does that make sense? Do you want to add anything,
So
Levi?
this is your starting spot. This is where you're going to start with. And Mac ProCan asked, what's the advantage of perfectly clear over Capture One in Photoshop? It's not over those. It's in conjunction with those. We're probably going to use perfectly clear with Photoshop or with Lightroom or with Capture One most of the time.
Yeah. One of the things I will say, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, perfectly clear in their color, in the color section of perfectly clear, they have what they call a patented color restoration adjustment. And what this does is that
well, show us your flow. And
okay.
I don't mean to cut you. I want to be respectful of your time, and it's moving along.
Okay. Yeah, I have no idea. I'm just sort of enjoying this. So
that's great.
So this is where I start. I'm going to cancel out of here because I'm not going to make any changes. The next thing that I typically do is I'll use Topaz Studio, and there's a dehaze and AI Clear plugins that I use there to process that. I'm not going to go into those today, but and then I use perfectly clear. I'll show you what's going on in this example. Now, because this is a smart object, I can go into these filters and I can try something. If I don't like it or I want to fine tune it, I can go back and I can modify those settings without those being locked into the image forever. I don't have to start over.
Yeah, that's a great way to work. If you just use it as a layer or like as a plugin for Lightroom, then when I hit save and perfectly clear, I'm baked in, and if I want to make adjustments, I have to start from scratch. So using a smart object workflow is a really great way to go.
So I'm going to just double click on the perfectly clear filter. Oh, you know what? People may wonder how the heck to add this. So if I've got...
Sorry, Chris. Let's go ahead and keep moving along, because we can find out how to do a smart object.
Oh no, I was going to just show them how to do the. Let's not forget to show them how to add a filter to a smart object. That's all.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay, so you can see we got some white space around this because I straightened it in Photoshop. And so let's see, I need to move this again. Let's move you over here. So this is let me just grab my sheets here, hang on. Yeah, I didn't memorize all this stuff, guys. I had to write my settings down so that we don't spend all of our time. I will say from the get-go that the best way to learn this tool is to play with it and explore it.
I agree.
There's so much going on here. And I don't mean that it's not overwhelming and intimidating. It's just that you have a tremendous amount of flexibility and power in this tool that if you don't play with it, you may not ever tap into it.
Yeah, but like you said, it's simple to learn.
It is.
You just turn it on and off and see what a slider does.
Exactly. So let's start doing that. In the tone section, I set exposure here. Hang on a second. I set the exposure here to 41. Now, one of the things to note here is that I'm going to type 41 in, and I'm not going to press the enter key. If you do, it's redundant. It'll just take the setting itself.
Gotcha.
And then we have the depth set at 75.
Oops, sorry, that's a black point.
Oh, am I? Sorry, thank you.
Yep. And you'll find too, everybody, that the exposure here is really cool because it doesn't blow out the highlights. It's really interesting how it intelligently analyzes your photograph and brightens the dark areas without blowing the highlights more.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks. Yeah, please join in with those pieces because there's just a lot going on here. Now, in the depth piece, we could choose between high contrast and high definition. You can see, I don't know, do you think they'll be able to see that change on
It's
this?
a subtle change, yeah.
But I guess, trust me on this, play with that every time. Don't
Right.
assume because it worked with the last one on high contrast that that's going to be the one that you use all the time. Honestly, I don't know until I switch back and forth a couple of times and go, well, maybe that one's cooler. In fact, I'm looking at this one and I chose high contrast originally. Now I'm looking at high def and I'm going, I kind of like what that's doing with the sky.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I switch back and forth every time I use the tool. I don't have a rule for which one's going to look better.
Now I set light diffusion at 50 because I wanted it to soften the light a bit. And that's what I ended up setting in tone. Is there anything else that you want to add?
No, that's great. Yeah, just get in there and play with those sliders.
Now let's come down to color. Now, what I was saying earlier about color is that the technology that they have here is that they're able to, through this color restore, to adjust the colors so that they get closer to what the eye actually sees around saturation in different parts of the photograph. So we get these really incredible vibrancy corrections, yet it maintains the original colors that you saw visually.
Yeah.
You know how sometimes you go out and you shoot something, you remember it looking a certain way, and when you go back and try to get it to look that way, it can be difficult. This is helpful in that process. So here I used an 11 color vibrancy. Do you want to talk about the difference between restore and vibrancy while I'm plugging these in?
Oh man, it could be quite technical, but I feel like color restore also has some contrast applied included with it. It's especially helpful if you've scanned a photograph from the 70s and you want to restore that photo. Color restore does a great job of that. And then whereas vibrancy affects primarily the blues and greens in your image, and then fidelity is phenomenal. It brings back the true colors of blues, greens, and especially purples. It's designed for purples, but it ends up working really well on blues and greens too. And
here's another place where we've got standard or vivid. Trust me, try each one. Again, it's the same thing as above.
Yeah.
You know, you want to try and then fine tune the settings. On this one, I decided to stay with standard. And what else did I have? Oh, Sky Enhance. So this is a very cool feature. So I'm activating Sky Enhance. And I ended up choosing the Blue Sky Cerulean and setting that guy at 50.
Yeah. Oh, man.
So you can see now the difference between, I hope they can see this. This is such a huge difference. The moment I turn that Sky Enhance on, look at how that pops.
Yeah, and it's really intriguing to me that your sky isn't really blue here, but you're still getting a great effect and getting that warmth back that you probably saw on the horizon, and even giving us a little more punch in the color in the foreground too.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, again, I sometimes it can be a challenge to recreate what you visually see. I think this tool is very helpful I'm without words. It's a very helpful tool in that regard.
Hey, would you just press your space bar for a second, Chris, and show us the before?
There's before. And that's where we are so far.
Yeah.
Again?
Yeah, that's cool.
No,
that's great.
Okay.
And somebody asked, is it false color in the foreground? No, so it's applying a LUT, and it's affecting all the colors with a certain algorithm, and that's it. If you don't like it, you use a different one or adjust the strength, or because you're using this in Photoshop, you can blend it out with a mask. And so there's a few different options. but it's not giving you a false color, but it is altering all the colors in the photograph in a particular way. And so,
Well, and I can tell you that this is closer to what it actually looked like
yeah,
when I shot it.
yeah,
So, I mean, with the space bar on, yeah, I mean, it's just super desaturated. There's not much going on because remember, I turned off vibrancy and saturation when I was creating the smart object using Camera Raw, the Photoshop Camera Raw.
yeah,
Set.
perfect.
Okay, so then down in details, I have sharpening set to 100. And this is something that I don't always do. I don't always do sharpening here. I sometimes will wait. Oh, I don't have any noise reduction on, didn't need it. Okay, so then down to the, so we're going to jump all the way down to the graduated filter. And, you know, I thought about using the linear gradient, and I tried it, and I actually liked it better without. What I ended up doing, though, is using the vignette. And
Yeah.
so let's go ahead and set that up. So we
Like
got
as a radial filter, you can position it in different places and things.
correct. I could, you know, place the center, click, and that's now the new center point. And then in exposure, let's make sure I got this guy. There we go. Okay. So then on the outside of the vignette, I've got an exposure set at -50. And contrast also set at -50. And you'll see this change as these are activated. Highlights, 25. Yeah, I hope I'm not boring. Whoops, I hope I'm not boring people here with this. I go through this as fast as I can, but I do want to show you guys what the settings are that I used in saturation at -40. So I desaturated. Why would I desaturate the outer area?
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, because color draws your eye, and as you desaturate that outside, you focus the attention back towards the center of your vignette.
I knew you knew that answer.
No, I hadn't considered it because it's not
Okay.
available like in Photoshop or in Lightroom when you're using the vignette tool. That's not an option. So,
Oh, you're right. That is true. That is true. Yeah. No, I think it's a great, you know, light and color focus our eyes on things. So yeah, desaturating it. So that's it. That's what I did. So then I apply this guy up here, brings us back into here. It's going to render this out as a filter. Oh, it's going back in to reapply the dehaze and the AI clear because I made changes to the original filter
yep.
settings.
And it does all that automatically, which is
Yeah, it just does that automatically for me. And in a moment here, we'll be back into.
Yeah.
And there we go.
Well, that's great. That's a pretty simple way to get things looking great. And it's like you said, it's much easier to learn than all the tools in Photoshop.
So that's before, and that's after.
Nice work.
Thanks.
Well, and thank you, Chris. I'm glad that you've taken some time to share these ideas with us. It's almost the hour. Do you have a few more minutes for a few more questions from folks?
Absolutely, I do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I really want people to get something useful out of this. So yeah, let's see if there's anything else we can do to help them.
Yeah. One person asked about while photographing, what do you choose for white balance? Do you use auto white balance? Do you choose a particular?
You know, it depends on the circumstances. You know, it's when I shoot on the ground, I typically will use a card of some sort to be able to do that. Can't really do that in the air.
Mm.
So I found that I typically will not shoot auto white balance because that never seems to work well for me. I'll either use sunny. Well, actually, sunny tends to be the default that I shoot.
Yeah.
Shoot with.
But you're also shooting raw, so you've got full control over that after the fact.
Correct. Yeah. If I were shooting JPEG, I might make some different choices, but because I always shoot raw, I'm able to reset that white balance after the fact.
Well, it looked like you used white balance as an effect in that photograph of the barges on the river with the blue surrounds, and like that's a striking way to work.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Good insight.
Also, somebody asked how long your batteries last in that drone.
Not as long as I want.
Yeah.
It depends on how much wind, how windy it is, but typically 20 to 25 minutes per pair of batteries. And the batteries cost $360 a pair.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then that leads us right to the next question. What do you think we should buy if we're, not necessarily new to photography, but new to aerial photography? Is this this doesn't sound like an entry-level tool that you're using?
No, this is really a professional tool, or a very, very serious hobbyist if you can afford it. But DJI just released the new Mavic 2 Pro, and it has a 1-inch sensor. I don't know if it's the same as the Sony 1-inch. I think it probably is based on what I've seen from it.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't have interchangeable lenses, but it does have adjustable f-stops.
Uh-huh.
And it's about $1,500, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
It will allow you to shoot good quality photos. I mean, part of it depends on, what level of quality you're looking for. A step down from that would be to the original Mavic Pro, not the 2, but the previous version. That's more limited from a camera's perspective, but it's also considerably cheaper, especially with the new version out. A lot of people are selling the original used, and it's also reduced in price. If you just kind of want to explore and play, then probably take a look at the Spark.
Yeah. Yeah. And also take a look at the used market. There's a lot of people upgrading their drones who were using the top of the line drone 5 years ago is now a very affordable option. For a few $100, you could probably pick up a Phantom 3 or a Phantom 4 would still be more expensive.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, I think, and I haven't tested this myself, but in talking with people who have been using them, the Phantom 4 Pro has a similar sensor to what's in the Mavic 2 Pro. But from what I've read, people are actually feeling like they're getting better results still out of the Phantom 4 Pro. Mm-hmm. So that would be another drone to take a look at. That would be a significant step down from the Inspire 2, but cost-wise, you're going to get good quality photographs and video, but you're not going to spend the big bucks of the Inspire world.
Right. Hey, Chris, why don't you switch photos for us? Just show us from your your Finder again. But it seems like.
Oh, let me show. This is kind of cool. Let me show you this one.
Yeah.
So this is. It's going to take a moment for it to settle here. This is a 36 image, 360-degree photograph that I shot of Vista House. And as you can see, we can, am I moving too fast for it to show?
No, that's about right. That's pretty good.
And you can see that with the 360 image,
Holy cow.
isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
And there's software out there where you guys it doesn't matter if you have an Inspire or if you have a Mavic. I don't know if you can do it with the Spark or not, but certainly with the Mavic or the Phantoms, you can produce these kinds of things. Oh, and there's amazing resolution, so we can zoom in quite a ways.
Right. That's great.
I just thought that would be fun for people to see.
Yeah, that's remarkable. And it seems like a very marketable product as well.
Yeah, there's a whole, this site, 360cities.net sells both 360 photographs and videos. So that was fun. Let me see what else.
That's great. When you fly, do you use a headset or are you just looking at an iPad or a phone?
Well, I've done both. I've flown with a headset, but primarily I fly using an iPad. I believe that the new Brother glasses, I'm trying to remember the model number.
Oh, you reviewed those on Photo Focus, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, if you guys want to check that out. The Brother makes technology where it places a small, very light monitor with a headband in front of one eye or the other so that it's fully FAA compliant. You can still maintain line of sight with your drone, and you see a equivalent of, I think it's like a 19-inch monitor in one eye or the other of what's going on the screen. So you can see what the camera's seeing, and you can still keep the drone in view.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've shot with both of them. I really like using the headset because it means I can keep my head up and know where the drone is.
And that was another question. Is this, do we have to maintain line of sight?
We do. Yeah. If you get in an accident and you're not paying attention to where the drone is, you're liable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just telling you what from my experience and what I've read and stuff.
Yeah. For the details of this stuff, guys, you can just Google it. Google, who do you need to register with? Yeah. Just Google drone registration and you will not find it hard to find out.
Yeah. And you do need, currently hobbyists and commercial pilots both need to register their drones.
Yeah, and John looked it up for us. He found the Brother is the BT300, and yeah, people are saying that goggles aren't legal, but you said that this particular tool specifically is legal.
Right, because it allows you to still view. The problem with goggles, I mean, goggles are very cool, but then that's a dual pilot scenario. You have somebody piloting and you have somebody in the goggles, so you need a dual operator setup to really use goggles legally.
Yeah, yeah, which is a great way to do it. I know a pilot in California, and she wears she flies the camera while her partner flies the drone. And she says that's the best thing because she finds that she ends up being in this weird position when she's flying the camera and looking in the goggles and things. And I thought that was pretty interesting that the comfortable position for her head was kind of weird looking.
Well, it is. And for some people, they actually get nauseous wearing the goggles. And others have to sit down. They can't stand up and fly, control the camera with the goggles on. They need to be seated because they lose their orientation.
That's a good point. Do you like to sit or do you like to stand?
I stand. I walk around. I actually have a harness system that a tray that I set the remote in, and then I've got a harness system that locks into that tray. And that's probably from the days of flying RC helicopters, but it allows me to take my hands off completely and rest my, I fly my drone a lot in what's called ADDI mode, where there's no GPS, because in windy conditions, I did a shoot a while back for Discovery Channel, and we were in this windy alleyway, and GPS wouldn't hold it. Yeah. And so I had to flick GPS completely off, put it in ADDI mode, and because of my experience with flying that way, I was able to actually control it and have it be more stable and safer flying it manually than I was in GPS mode. So with the tray situation, I can then set the drone up, fly it that way in ADDI mode, and then when I need to rest my hands, I can flip it back into GPS mode, take my hands off the controls, stretch my fingers, and know that the remote and everything's going to be right where I left it.
Oh, that's cool. That's a great idea. Like mine I've got a large controller for my Phantom, and then I can mount an iPad additionally on top of that, and it becomes quite a hefty thing to hold.
It does, yeah. And if you're doing this for hours and hours, you want to have a way of being able to rest your hands and arms. And
yeah. You don't have any pictures of yourself using that, do you, Chris?
I don't. I need to have a friend of mine take some shots.
It's a good idea. Like that. There's a post for your next Better Drone Pilot.
Oh yeah, cool. Thanks.
And speaking of which, where can we learn more from you?
As you know, I'm an author for Photo Focus, so there's a whole drone section on photofocus.com. And my personal website is portlandprodrones.com. And there's a link there for articles and such, where it'll show you all of the different articles for beginning pilots. I have a section called Getting Started, and then you can see all of the other articles that are related to both drones, photography, and videography.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
And again, this was brought to you by Perfectly Clear from Athentech, and you will receive a email from Perfectly Clear about their promo. If you use the code DRONE30, they're going to give you 30% off your purchase of Perfectly Clear to help you make your pictures look the way you saw them when you shot.
Just one comment on that. Isn't there a trial period that you can check it out as well?
There is. I believe there's a 30-day trial.
Right.
And then you can still, you can just, and so it's a full version. There's nothing hindered or fettered in the trial version. So you can get your hands on the 21 day.
21 day. Okay. Yeah. And so that's great. You can get in there and dig into it and find what really works for you. And
absolutely. And I sure enjoy using it, and I sure enjoyed learning with you, Chris. So thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you, Levi. Thank you, everybody that is signed in and watching. I appreciate you taking the time, and I hope that what I had to share was helpful. Enjoy your drones, fly safe, have fun, and we'll probably talk again at some other time.
I hope so. Thank you, Chris. And lastly, this was recorded. We'll send you a link to the recording too, so you can review. Have a great day.
Okay. Thanks, man. You too.